All right, welcome back to the Cybertalk with Bob and Chris. We'll call it the circus this week. I think that's the appropriate name of it.
That's
Uh,
probably right.
yeah, I'm Chris. That's Bob. That way, and we just want to talk about the punching bag for the week, Rackspace.
Yeah, it's
It's been a week since they've been down. No, they're still down.
I can't believe it's been a week,
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
they
you
have two class section lawsuits, so they probably can't
right
believe it's
now.
been a week either. Yeah.
Right now it's 2, these lawyers are gonna people are gonna start lining up and come up with different reasons, but, for anyone that doesn't know, Rackspace, was doing a lot of email hosting, and several businesses, like lots of businesses, don't have email.
It, and it's not all of their email systems, it's their hosted exchange environment that would be comparable to like what Microsoft 365 is. That's what was hit. And they have other email services that weren't hit. And they filed a SEC, they filed an 8K, I think it was on Tuesday. I made a video about it. I think it was on Tuesday. And they talked about how it was ransomware. And if you look at the lead up to it, there's data out there by other people that we'll just talk about that showed that they hadn't patched their exchange servers for a 0 day that was being actively exploited in September that Microsoft patched in November. Now Microsoft gave mitigations in October about how to try to mitigate it. To be fair, the mitigations didn't always work, so they couldn't mitigate all the risk. However, Rackspace also appears to run their hosted exchange behind F5 load balancers,
Okay.
and they actually would probably have a web application firewall, which did have mitigation techniques that could have been built into it and just apparently worked.
So
So
this is another instance of people buying products, plugging them in, and not learning how to use them.
yeah, and then not patching on top of that. So it's like, I look, all this stuff will come out in the lawsuits, and we're here. We're not here to speculate completely, but the evidence that we've seen leads us to believe that they could have avoided this, and they didn't because they were, I don't want to say too lazy to patch, but they didn't patch when the patch came out in November. They were hit December 2nd, so the patch had been almost a month at that point. The web application firewall rule that they could have applied that would have mitigated it had been out for almost 2 months, and now they're still down. If I know two people that were affected by this, two companies that were affected by this. One was lucky, and they had a year of their email cached, so they still have access to their email. And they did move to 360. They moved to Microsoft 365, and they were able to import that mail. But like another one, they only had 2 weeks. They
Yeah.
have no access to email beyond the 2 weeks, and people are losing their mind. And the weird thing about this is, you look at Rackspace; they're a $3 billion company. Their hosted exchange business was only $30 million. But now you're talking about the reputation hit that they're taking. You're talking about just horrible security practices in general. Like, look, there's four ways to deal with risk. You can avoid it. So in this case, they could have just dumped their hosted exchange and not had it. They could have transferred it, like just use Microsoft 365 and put all their customers there instead of hosting it internally. Um, you can accept risk, which you probably shouldn't do, but it seems like they accepted the risk of just not patching like they should have, and they didn't do anything to mitigate it. Like, again, we talked about the things they could have did to mitigate the risk, and they just didn't do it.
Right,
But
but all the subscribers assume that they were covering the risk for them,
oh, absolutely. Well,
and, we stopped a long time ago trying to host Exchange anywhere but Microsoft. The way I look at it is Microsoft wrote it. Microsoft knows how to maintain it, and Microsoft knows how to scale it.
and they give you the ability to back up your email if you need to. Rackspace doesn't give you that. So the situation that people are in is they didn't have a really good way of backing up their email. Yes, if it was cached to their device, like Windows, they could export it and they could do that. If you had a Mac, well, that was loud.
Yeah, sorry about
If you
that.
had if you had a Mac, it wouldn't really work. If you have a mobile device, it wouldn't really work. But if you had a PC, you're able to kind of recover whatever mail is cached. But like at the end of the day, when you're a customer and you trust a vendor, a third party vendor, and this goes beyond Rackspace, when you trust them to take care of things and they don't, this is the stuff that can happen. We've seen this with other third party vendors. There was one InSync that was a couple years ago. They were hosting accounting applications for businesses and accountants, and they got hit, and people didn't have access. I think it was almost a month they didn't have access to like their financial data. Um, it, it's a
Imagine,
danger with third parties. It really is, and it's something that I don't think people talk about enough.
a lot of people get scared of the cloud, but we really need to make sure that everything is protected and that they test their recovery plans.
And it's on us to make sure that like and I say us, I mean customers, I mean just companies in general, we need to be able to look at third parties that we use and ask them questions. They need to be assessed. There's a really big need, especially for small and medium businesses, to do assessments on these companies and ask them the hard questions, right? Now, are you gonna be able to do that to Microsoft? No. Are you gonna be able to do that to Google? Probably not. Or Amazon? No. But they have pretty good security practices. But they also have they're very clear about where the shared responsibility is. So like
Yep.
where you're responsible for certain things, like at Microsoft land, you're responsible to protect the login of your account. If you choose not to put multi-factor authentication on your account and it gets breached, that's not Microsoft's problem. That's your problem.
Yeah, and the latest thing I just saw on that one is, yes, you're responsible for your account, and then you're also responsible for anything that's done with your account
Yep.
if it's been compromised. That including services that the account might get used to spin up and actually cost you a lot of money.
Yeah. Well, and then also, what if your email sends out, I don't know, phishing email or something like that, and that it leads to somebody losing some sort of, having some sort of financial penalty, right? They could potentially sue you for that.
I was
Um,
just I was just chasing one business email compromise that I know 4 people that got compromised because of this one email that came out. So, not having the right controls in comes back to
yeah.
individuals and
So,
having a process in place. And then, Chris, you talk about assessments. We're both we're both assessed individually by a third party security company just to make sure
mhm.
we're doing the right things.
Yeah, and I think that's important. Like, I don't know if I don't talk about it enough. I don't think, especially when we're talking like prospects and things like that. But it's something that's important. Like, even though we're security focused, I still both Bob and I believe this. We still believe that we need to have somebody. I don't want to say do Overwatch of our network. Well, that was close.
Yeah.
um, Overwatch, but like just validate what we're doing is everything that we need to do. Because one of the things that I've noticed in business, and we tend to, I don't want to say, we focus so much on our customers that, especially IT providers, tend to have lackluster controls internally. And that's not everybody, but I've seen enough IT companies to understand and see enough ways even internal IT works that you need to have somebody help you look over things and remind you that you're not doing things properly. It's kind of like accounting, right? You can have a bookkeeper, you can have somebody doing your books and stuff like that, but you really want that CPA to oversee, things that are going on and make sure that you're doing everything right. Especially,
It's not just the IT company. It's any company that's going
mhm,
on. There was always the analogy of a shoemaker's child having the worst shoes because he's spending all the time focusing on his clients,
yep.
and that's what everyone's doing. That's why we engage that third party to really assess us. I know one web developer that had a crappy website, and he actually outsourced his website to somebody else because he was spending all his time on client projects, which is kind of crazy, but it's the same analogy.
It's also kind of amusing in the same
Yeah.
sense. But it's true. Like if you, because if you're working on your own website, you're not making money, right? You're not billing customers, you're not doing
Mhm.
everything, and that's kind of like the thing that gets lost in this. And look, we understand everybody's busy. Everybody, you have your own business, stuff like that. But when you're doing when you still need to make sure that you're looking at the risk of things that you're doing, especially in IT, and just make sure you're doing things right. So evaluating third parties is important, and I think that's the big deal. Is evaluate the third parties that you're dealing with. That includes companies like ours. You
Sure.
should be absolutely asking us questions and evaluating us because there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of muddied waters. You'll see proposals that promise things that just can't quite be delivered. And unfortunately, it's on you as the owner of the business or an executive of the business making that decision to kind of have a good understanding of what's real and what's not. And it's tough. It's not easy, but if you have a legal question, do you just guess on stuff or you go find an expert?
You go to Google, no?
I use Chat GPT, but that's another story that we can talk about later.
So I was on a training session this week about the new FTC guidelines, and
Mhm.
they actually talked about the FTC guidelines now have punitive damages for people that are non-compliant come July.
Well, FTC you can have criminal charges, right? It's not just civil; it's criminal. Yeah.
It's criminal. There's jail time involved, and it's going to go right back to the business owner if they're not doing the right stuff. So that's a great topic for another discussion. We're at
Yeah,
11
it
minutes
is.
now,
Yeah.
and
Just just understand that we need to look at the risk of any company you conduct business with. You should look at the risk of that company and kind of do an evaluation process and ask questions. I think that's a big key. I think that's a big takeaway from Rackspace in general. Is just you're trusting so much with them that you need to make sure that they're the right vendor for you, and that goes for anybody, including us, including anybody. Just make sure you're doing your due diligence.
and my message to people is if you're going to run Microsoft Exchange, let's go to Office 365. We're not messing around with any other vendors. There's just no reason to anymore.
Although on that note, one of the big resellers of Host Exchange sent an email to me because I'm technically a partner, and I'm not going to drop names here, but they were just trying to just dump all over Rackspace and talk about security stuff like that. And I'm like, you have the same system that they do, so if you ever get hit with a 0-day, you're going to have the same problem.
Yep.
So, yeah. Let's not dump on these companies. Let's actually use this as a learning opportunity to learn and figure out like what we need to do in our businesses, and not just use it as an opportunity to try to capitalize on the misfortunes of somebody else.
Cool.
So,
well, that's all I got for this week. Holiday season is upon us. And Christmas parties are here. So it's time to move on.
all right, we'll be back next week. If you have any comments or questions or any kind of topics you want us to cover, let us know. We will definitely have a topic next week because this stuff is happening so often that just makes it easy.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yeah, but it makes it pretty easy to talk about. So, all right, have a good week, guys.